For our first story, we have my husband, 36 male, just gave me, 34 female, an ultimatum. Quit my side hustle teaching yoga or he's leaving our link up. Here we go. Long-winded. Enter at your own risk. I got married a year and a half ago to the most incredible person. I'd just gotten out of a 6-year relationship. We were friends for a few months, and it quickly became every bit of the classic, when you know, for both of us. Within 3 months we'd bought our first home, got engaged after 9 months, and then got married almost a year to the day. From our engagement, with a dream destination wedding in Greece. We've been together now 3+ years. It's important to know we are in multicultural marriage. My husband is Hindu Punjabi, emigrated from India over a decade ago, and I'm a white American. Greece was equidistant travel for both of our families, who get along famously and have really embraced our blending of cultures. We have a lot of family support on both sides. When we got married we were on the same page about what we expected from each other and what we wanted. Our red lines were physical violence and cheating. We agreed everything else was figure-outable. One of those things we agreed on was fitness. Early in our relationship, we worked out together constantly, went on runs, etc. And we talked often about our mutual desire to continue to cultivate a long, healthy life together. A few differences to note. He grew up in a household with very traditional gender roles in India. His father was verbally abusive to his mother, would go days giving her the silent treatment. My husband has been open about how witnessing this affected him growing up. His parents have worked it out over time, but his mom has shared openly about this dynamic with me. His father rarely has to lift a finger at home but worked very hard to provide for the family, very traditional Indian culture. My husband has 2 sisters who both take a more modern approach to their relationships, and that seems to be accepted within the family. My parents split responsibilities 50-50 as often as possible. Both worked full-time, they've always been best friends, and I rarely saw them argue. My husband is easily triggered and very reactionary, works on it in his own way but refuses to try individual therapy. Shortly after we got together, we moved to a new state for his job about an hour north of the city where we met, had lots of friends. He worked a mid-shift at the time and wasn't getting home until 1 to 3 in the first year of living in our new state. The hour drive made it harder to see friends regularly and I was home alone all the time. Integrative nutrition and movement gave me my life back a few years ago after being diagnosed with a chronic illness, so after about a year of living in our new state, I found a local fitness studio to start taking classes to tone up for our wedding and meet some friends. My husband has had on-off issues with marijuana. Very all-or-nothing kind of person. No balance when weed is in the house, so that started to creep back in just before we got married. It's a daily fight for him and I'm here to help him through it. Every few months, he relapses, goes on a bender and then realizes it sends him into a deeper depression. Being loved by a supportive partner gave me another level of confidence. I felt like I could pursue just about anything and we'd somehow make it happen. I'd been a fitness instructor in college and had always wanted to pick it back up, so with his late-night schedule, I signed up for a yoga teacher training program and started the weekend we returned from our wedding. It was every other weekend intensives and a big time commitment, but I made a point to try my best to nurture our free time together. I ended up loving teaching yoga, made lifelong friends, and was the first of my cohort to be offered a job right after training at the studio. Teaching at this studio is highly competitive. Usually you have to do a mentorship, but they let me get right on the schedule. I was thrilled. My husband started experiencing pretty significant job stress around this time, and honestly, a really awful boss situation. We've all been there, and started showing symptoms of high-functioning depression. In bed for both weekend days doom scrolling and watching football, withdrawn from activities that used to make him happy, no desire to spend time with friends and limited energy to spend time with me. His parents, my parents, and some of our friends noticed the change. Instead of a partnership, he started expressing his desire for me to act more like a stay-at-home wife, dinner on the table every night, house tidy as my main responsibility. I also work a 9 to 5 remote from home and am the breadwinner, so it was hard to have this expectation morph from a shared responsibility to solely mine. All of this was building until we found out I had an aggressive form of pre-cancer and had to see a specialist for treatment in another state, 8-hour round trips every weekend for months. The whole thing seemed to give him purpose again, and confronted with my potential early mortality, We spent our car rides talking about our dreams and life goals. We dreamed up an idea to start a matcha and cold-pressed juice camper to have a little side business together on the weekends and started moving forward with that, but as soon as I got the all clear last June, he fell right back into a depressive episode. I tried to plan small activities without putting too much on his plate. Work stress was still at an all-time high, but after a while, he started to resent me for keeping him away from being in bed. I continued with our business plans alone, kept teaching yoga, working my 9 to 5 and holding it down for him at home, but no amount of me would help pull him out of the work-bed depression cycle. In his darker moments, he expressed that he felt like my job teaching yoga was taking away from my ability to be there for him. When I ask for specifics, he likes to tell me I should know, and that no matter what I did, I was somehow falling short. At this point, I'd fallen in love with teaching yoga. My classes started waitlisting. Helping my students gave me passion and purpose, and I'd finally found real community, which was such a bright spot when there was no effort being put into our partnership at home. Our fights began to escalate and I found myself on the receiving end of low blows, name-calling and verbal abuse. I tried so hard to meet him where he was and stay neutral, non-reactive, but you can only be called a bitch so many times without losing it on occasion. This past November, he was promoted and finally had normal work hours. I switched my workout schedule at the studio to mornings so that I could be there for him when he got home at night, with the exception of one night a week. When I got offered a second class, weekend spot on the yoga schedule, because my first class was doing so well, I wanted to accept it immediately but made a point to ask him first. He said he was okay with it but hated the idea. Over the past year of teaching, it's been hard seeing instructor friends' husbands show up for them. Something about this gig my husband just hates, and I wish he could just be supportive and proud, but any time I spend at the yoga studio, max 3 hours weekly, he's expressed it takes away from him somehow. A girlfriend, who he knows well and I thought likes as a human, from the yoga studio came over Monday night to do a little bit of work on a series we're doing together. I cooked dinner for us all, made sure my husband had what he needed, and after my friend left, I got in bed and gave him a hug only to be met by, "Get the fuck away from me," followed by 48 hours of the silent treatment, despite my pleading to try to have a conversation. Last night, he came to me and said, "It's yoga or it's me. You have until Sunday to quit your teaching job or I'm leaving our marriage," and I'm just gutted. I've tried to offer a compromise and even offered to take a short leave of absence from teaching, but he refuses to speak to me until I make my decision on Sunday, and apparently, it's all or nothing. Movement has saved my mental health. I found so much purpose through teaching. Having a student approach me to tell me they sleep better on nights they'd taken one of my classes or they feel more relaxed or inspired in any way just absolutely lights me up. I finally feel seen standing up there, and I've somehow gotten good at it. I love being of service to other people. Yoga has transformed my mental health so much that I stepped away from therapy in 2023. But out of desperation I reached out to my former psychologist for an emergency session this morning, who told me to hold the line and not quit just because he's threatening to leave. Hearing her say, "The hardest thing you will ever do is say no and then watch what he does next," has ripped me to my core. I still love this man and desperately want to make it work, even though I know if I were to hear this story from a friend or stranger, they'd tell me to run. I finally told my parents what's been going on. They're supportive. I quietly reached out to his sister, who reassured me that we are family and they'd knock some sense into him. But am I missing something here? The ultimatum seems like it's about something so much deeper than my yoga job, but it's ripping me apart that the person I love wants me to quit something I've become so passionate about. Not sure what my next move is, but I'd love to hear any takes from fellow internet stranger friends. Edit. I have asked him to seek individual and marriage counseling. The ultimatum he gave is totally rooted in an attempt to control me. My current plan is to give him options, one of those options being therapy or mediation of some kind. That's the end of our first post. Let's see what the commenters had to say. Our first commenter says, "It's interesting how you start your post with, 'I married the most incredible person.' But the rest of your post is about how he's stripping away your sense of self and your coping mechanisms and resorting to unhealthy and destructive coping mechanisms of his own. It seems he only reverted back to this incredible person you married when you were very sick and needed him. This man wants a woman who depends on him for her every need and has no life outside of him. That is not you. It's okay to admit you misjudged someone and made a mistake marrying him. I agree with your therapist. You need to tell him no. If he leaves over this, it's better you know now before you have kids. If he doesn't leave and backs down on his threat, you still need to consider your future because this, isn't it? Our second commenter says, greater than when you know, except it turned out you didn't. I think you're getting to know the real him, and he's kind of like his dad. Our third commenter says, you have something that gives you a sense of purpose and mental health, and he wants to take that from you. Walk away. Physical violence and cheating shouldn't be the only red lines. Emotional abuse and other forms of abuse are also red lines. Not everything is figure-outable. You're the primary earner in this relationship. His demands are not reasonable. You know that. You don't have a partner. You have a depressed man-baby who is neglecting his own mental health and exacerbating it with weed. I would tell him that I won't quit my yoga teaching and that if it's a deal breaker, consider it broken, because I'm not doing ultimatums like that. I would also tell him that the only way I'd consider repairing our marriage is if he's willing to quit weed entirely and get into some intensive therapy. Perhaps a separation is in order. He sounds a lot like his father. For our second story, we have, I am 25 female and my husband is 25 male. We have been married for a year and he has spent $20,000 in less than 6 months. Is filing for divorce hard? IDK if I can do this. Link saved $20,000 for a wedding, instead of spending it on a wedding. We did a small wedding that my family paid for. We planned on taking a nice honeymoon. I noticed my husband buying ZYNS and beer every day. He also buys lunch for his coworkers. Obviously he is spending it on something else, but I don't know what. He is spending like crazy and I kept getting on to him. He obviously didn't listen and said it's our money. I'm upset because we never even took a honeymoon or anything. Yet that money is gone. He doesn't help me at all at home, laundry piles up. Dishes aren't done. I'm honestly so stressed and depressed. I've lost 20 pounds from stress. IDK if this is a normal thing in young marriages, but I'm crying all the time. Am I being selfish for wanting to leave because he can't save money? We have no children. That's the end of our second post. Let's see what the commenters had to say. Our first commenter says, not normal at all. Your husband sounds like he is using substances or has some other addiction issues. You should get a separate bank account and stay your family, and honestly, I would divorce. Or at least separate and decided how you really want to proceed. But he will spend everything you give him and being poor is extremely stressful. Divorce is easier. Some people I know just got a mediator because they didn't own anything of value and just split it all equally. Our second commenter says, who TF spends $20,000 on zins, beers, and lunch? I bet homeboy indulges in some nose beers to spend that kind of cash. Drop his ass. You married a child. Our third commenter says, you are so young, you could start over. Divorcing now will not have the implications that it would have later. Marriage is hard, but you shouldn't be depressed and stressed every day. You should still feel like even in the challenging times you have a teammate who respects you and wants the best for you both. I'm sorry you are going through this. For our last story, we have, my 35 female husband 33 male keeps dulling our family's shine, and I think it's why our child has self-esteem issues. Edit to clarify, my husband has a hard time regulating himself when the children are curious and emotions and energy are high. Same for me, if I have something exciting to share, he doesn't show excitement or interest. There's a lot of anxiety and depression he's working through. The children were unplanned, and he wanted to keep them. When he talks to them like shit, he is pointing out the obvious in an inappropriate and condescending tone. He doesn't name-call, tease, or bully. I am aware that him not showing excitement and using inappropriate tones can be damaging. He parents very much like my dad, who I no longer speak with. My dad was an emotional abuser and my mum didn't stick up for me, but I still love her and don't hold her responsible. My husband is not abusive to me. He has never made threats to any of us, and neither is he manipulative. He quite literally can't cope with our family having high emotions and energy and does not seem to have the capacity to respond appropriately. That is his only flaw as a parent and partner. My husband used to be an outgoing, fun-loving man. We got married, and I fell pregnant within a year of meetings, and I think he regrets having a family. We have 2 boys, 7 and 3. He had a good childhood, and his mum was loving and attentive, and he is anything but to me and our boys. Every day, he makes our 7 and 3-year-old cry, talks to them like shit, responds to stupid questions with disgust in his face and tone, and doesn't show any enjoyment with them. I've noticed that my 7-year-old will play on people's approval and go overboard with his excitement, which sets my husband off. Honestly, he's the children should be seen and not heard person, and he just doesn't get it. He's in therapy, but it's like we need someone to follow us around filming and then let him watch himself. We're 4,000 km from home with the 7-year-old. We landed a few hours ago. He's already made him cry, and I want to tell my husband to fuck off back home and leave me and our 7-year-old to enjoy the weekend together. It's his attitude to me, too. He just dulls everything and can never get excited about things and gets shitty at us when we're excited. He is a good person. He has a lot of integrity and other great qualities, but he just can't help but dull our shine. That's the end of our last post. Let's see what the commenters had to say. Our first commenter says, "Why are you forcing your children to live with someone who doesn't like them? He only gets upset when they're curious or excited. This means he's only happy when they're unhappy." Our second commenter says, "I had this childhood. Your husband is abusive to his kids. Plain and simple. You need to do better as a parent because this will, and already is, destroying them and any hope of them having loving families in the future." Our third commenter says, "Misery loves company. If he's miserable, he's going to make everyone around him feel the same." Sounds pretty selfish and rude to me. Even with therapy and you discussing the behavior, nothing is changing. Your poor children growing up thinking this is an acceptable way to treat people. Good luck. That's all for today. If you enjoyed, please leave a like and subscribe. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.